Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney save. Today we have the final build for Sulani, one that I have been equally just dreading in a sort of sense of like, I'm nervous to do this build, but also really excited because this is a fun build, and from the thumbnail, hopefully you guys got to see a little bit like a sneak peek of how it turned out. I really love how this ended up looking. At the beginning here, you're gonna start to see me struggle a bit with the shape, and there's some weird cuts as I sort of work through how many layers and levels I want this to be and where the shape sort of lies in creating a pirate ship. But I found it and I'm really excited for how it turns out. The interior is just as fun. And of course, if you don't recognize this ship, it is going to be based on the Jolly Roger from Peter Pan. Captain Hook, Shmi, and the crew are going to live here. They're all a bunch of like mixed adults and elders, and sort of some of the worst Sims I've made. I always like to have those like households where, you know, you've got like your goody households where everyone's like really kind or really studious, respectful, like Mulan and her family where everyone's super well-rounded and nice, and you would just love to like spend a lot of time on their farm. And then you have households like this where you just have a bunch of men, and the way that I described this to my fiance is like, these are men that like if you were going to get on an elevator and the door opened and these 8 men were standing there, you would just not get on. I picked some of the worst traits, some of the traits that make the most sense. Of course, they're going to be like mean, kleptos, just complete absolute weirdos, but sort of fun and like whimsical, not as serious as the Pirates of the Caribbean characters that I made. They have that like Peter Pan jokey kind of aspect, even some of like their costumes and what they're wearing, a bit more colorful, ideas like that. Now the Jolly Roger itself has kind of a couple of things going on that are a little specific. One of the only key features that it really had is on the very back of the ship, up towards the upper level back part, there's like this huge gold rounded bit that makes up the top of the ship. So I eventually did sort of like tool something into place there, and then I was like trying to decide what colors I want to go for the Jolly Roger, because if you see it on like in parades in Disney World, you're gonna see a red and white striped ship. That's very typically how it's shown, and I think that's also because of the Peter Pan TV show that they made that's for children, that's on Disney Channel Junior. There's like a new show that they have, I don't know what that is, but it takes place in Neverland and a lot of the characters are reused, and I think they tried to color things differently and they ended up using red a lot for this ship. However, the original version of it that's shown in the first Peter Pan film is just this like basic brown galleon, and it doesn't even have a lot of decor on it, more specifically like around it, because I think when you picture a pirate ship you can really picture like a lot of stuff hanging from it, like buoys and different equipment, fishing nets, things like that sort of hanging from the ship. But this one really doesn't have that, or at least like from the few zoomed out shots from a very old film, you don't really see that. It's a massive galleon and it looks kind of like an expensive one, but it doesn't have a lot of that like clutter, especially around the outside of the ship. So I did opt to skip a lot of that, where I could have like sort of cluttered up the sides and used a lot of those debug buoys and things from Cats and Dogs. I tried to add it on and it made it look more like a regular fishing boat. I don't know how else to describe it. It just didn't feel quite right for the atmosphere of the way that I feel like Captain Hook keeps the ship. So a lot of the decor and the gold treasure is going to be in the captain's quarters, still on the ship. Still feels very much like an actual pirate ship. When you go inside, it's like, I love how the interior of this thing is laid out, but the outside doesn't have a ton to it. What we have is the pieces that come from Get Famous that you can set up on the acting set to use for, like, there's tons of pirate ship pieces. This is something that I've wanted to do since the beginning of the save. I always knew there would be a pirate ship, and there was like a couple of different ones that we could have done. Like obviously I could have done Captain Jack's ship and tried to do the Black Pearl and make it look a little bit more ghosty, spooky, but this one fits really well in Sulani. This lot was always like the lot that it had to go on, and there is this weird debug foundation. Fun fact, if you're looking for a little tip when it comes to building lots like this, there is a foundation that this boat is sitting on, but there's a debug foundation from the City Living Pack that you can use, and it makes the foundation invisible. So you can kind of see like a little bit of a glow under the water where the foundation is supposed to be. That's what that like blue line is under the ship. ship, but it helps make it look like it's actually sitting on the water a lot better than just like a foundation straight through the floor on a water lot. And I always knew, like I mentioned, that this particular boat was going to go here. I knew I wanted this really grand pirate ship, and how fun would it be to have Sims be able to live on a pirate ship. This lot is the one that's all the way up at the tippy top north of Sulani by itself, and it's also one of the very few water lots where the water is laid out horizontally, so it makes really good space for a boat like this. I originally started with a few just like rounded edged rectangles, and I thought maybe just layering one or two of those alongside the Get Famous ship pieces would be enough, but it really needed more shape and dimension and a couple more layers as well. I didn't want this to be like absolutely massive. I don't think the Jolly Roger is like the biggest galleon you've ever seen in your life. It's pretty big, and you'll see from the captain's quarters in the area that is designated as the captain's quarters, it's a big ship, but it's not massive. I didn't want to do this like 3 or 4 story ship. It's just a really good sized ship. How it worked out, because I added 2 levels. The top level is going to be the captain's quarters, and he has his own private bathroom up there, and then the downstairs area is like the main kitchen, the brig, the area that all of the crew live in, and kind of this big communal sleeping area. And then of course they have their own restroom as well, just for playability reasons. Not too much decor on the beach. I thought about doing like a structure, but I really just wanted the main focus to be the ship. So there's like some camping areas and some fire pits and obviously trees and things like that, but the focal point is the ship. So that's going to be pretty much the bulk of the video today. Another reason for me deciding to go with the brown look is these pieces that come from Get Famous only come in one color swatch, believe it or not, and it's brown. So I got kind of lucky in that way. The alternative was to use those brown pieces and sort of like try to mix the red in, maybe find some red curtains to use as the sails, but ultimately I just really wanted to go with the first version of the ship and the original from the film. That's kind of the only reference I've been using when creating Peter Pan things for my save file. Peter Pan has been done so much and in so many different ways, and I've read, you know, obviously we have the original book and we've got the live action versions. There's been a few, including the most recent one from Disney, and then we've got the first animated one from Disney, the second, and like I mentioned, there is some kind of a TV show that runs on Disney Junior. So there's lots of reference, there's lots of different like versions of this ship that I could have gone with, but I'm trying to mostly stay true to the original version and just kind of go with that for the sake of keeping everything really clean. Right before my last trip to the US, I watched the live action, the new live action Peter Pan. It was a straight to Disney Plus release, which is never a good sign, because obviously that means like either we didn't put enough money into it that it means we should do a full theatrical release, or they don't necessarily think it's going to do well enough theatrically that they just don't launch it that way, because they know that their money is really going to be made from either people resubscribing to watch it, or they already have their subscriptions. It's a new thing built into the service. So I didn't have really great expectations for that. The cast is kind of interesting because you have Jude Law, which is like, he's one of my all-time favorites, and I thought he was a really, really great cast for Captain Hook. He's a super diverse actor, and I just thought he was a really great pick overall. And then kind of a good thing and a bad thing, they went for like some no names for or I should say new names for Peter and for the Lost Boys, which could go either way. And then Wendy, I didn't originally notice her or recognize her when they first announced the cast, but after like literally a minute of the movie playing, I was like, I know her. And she is the girl who played young Natasha Romanoff in Black Widow. So that was kind of cool, because I was like, oh, that's actually a good cast. That's a good pick. In the movie, it's been a few months since I watched it, so I'm like struggling to remember all of the things that I really liked about it and didn't like about it. I won't go too much into details for those of you who haven't seen it, but I just wanted to mention that I saw it and like didn't hate it, which is something that doesn't happen all the time for the Disney live actions. It's always like kind of fun when you go to see one, and it's not horrible. You're not like angry as soon as you walk out of the theater. Or in this case, laying in my bed, wasn't completely frustrated. I was taken back by some of the special effects. The flying in particular is really off-putting. It's not my favorite that I've ever seen. I don't really like the way that they did Neverland. They made it more of like woodsy, less a jungle, and it's so dark, the whole film is. It's really perplexing why Disney continues to do that. Like, their idea of making something live action means that we can't have it have any color, as if real life doesn't have any color. And obviously I don't mean it in the way that an animated film does color and is allowed to kind of play with the idea of color, but when you take something as like bright and rainbows and Mermaid Lagoon and the jungle and tropical as Neverland and you make it look like a deep, dark, dense forest, like when I say I don't think that there's a single shot in the film with any sunlight, I swear I mean it. I don't understand that choice. They keep doing it over and over, and I don't understand why we can't have live action equal, let's still do a little bit of color. So the whole thing is like not my favorite aesthetically to look at, which is always a bummer, especially for a film that is so well known for its aesthetics. The way that the animated Peter Pan is like colored and designed, and the characters, and people are obsessed with it, including me as a child. It was one of my infatuations, the color grading, the interesting way that they did the film. Loved it. So it's just kind of a bummer that they take something so like spectacularly colorful and dull it down so badly. The characters are quite a bit different. Peter is like not in the film as much as you would think, and it's kind of a good thing in my opinion. The scenes that he's not in are some of the best in the film. And then just to skip all the way to the end, it has kind of a twist ending that I did appreciate. There's a couple of little things about it that they did that they went with. I wish they had gone a little bit harder with it and really stuck to it. They didn't, but I appreciated the effort of trying to do the twist, and I thought that some of the details they did for the twist were interesting and fun, and like Captain Hook's jacket, if you catch me, I thought that that was really kind of cool. There's one particular scene towards the end of Wendy on the ship, and if you've seen the original animation, this is not a spoiler. Like obviously she ends up on the Jolly Roger. Her and all of the Lost Boys and her brothers are held captive. There's a really cool scene that they do where they like flash forward through her life and what it was going to be, and it's really well acted and really well done. And that is like, again, perplexing because that doesn't exist much else in the film. Like there's no real like banger moments of really, really great acting and storytelling. It's all just fine, and then you have that moment that's really, really nice and interesting, and you're like, where was that the whole film? Like it feels like it should have been that the whole film. Or what I was saying about it is that it feels like it was a film that's obviously already written. They know where they're going, they know what the story is going to be, and they had some interesting ideas of what they wanted to do to change it and make it interesting, but they had to add all this other stuff in to get there because the story's already been done. So they know that they have to do XYZ to get to the new interesting stuff that they wanted to tell. And maybe they didn't care as much about the older stuff that they knew they had to walk through to get to the more interesting stuff, so it just isn't done as well. That's my thoughts on the film. It was pretty good though. Like I'll say, for a straight to Disney Plus film that I had no expectations for, I'd give it like a 6 or 7 out of 10. It was not even half as bad as most of the stuff that Disney's putting out for live action, so thumbs up from me. I have some personal really exciting news to share. I don't even know if I want to say anything yet because I'm like, it's so far away, but I don't think I could keep this secret if I wanted to. I'm going back to Disney World. I said I wasn't going to do it, and I definitely, like, I was in absolute no territory. Like, I've got so much going on. I'm getting married now when you're hearing this audio in just a few weeks. I'm still getting settled here in the UK. We would like to move. We would like to get a little bit more settled. And then we have other plans that we want to do, including travel that doesn't include Disney, but my fiance's entire family is going to Disney World next year. It's like this big family trip that they're planning, and we originally opted out, and I was just like, I can't do it. There's so many things going on. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I have some unused Disney tickets way back from like the early stages of the pandemic. I was supposed to go to Disney World. We had already had the trip booked and planned and paid for, and as we got closer to the date of actually going, because of pandemic related things, people that were supposed to come on the trip, it was like my family trip that I had put together where my siblings and friends and I were all going to go. I paid for a lot of them to go, and so I had like sets of tickets for all of us, and a lot of them ended up not being able to come for various reasons. So now I just have like unused Disney tickets, and I called Disney and asked them what I can do with them, and they were like, well, obviously we can't give you a refund, but you can just continue to move the tickets to a later date, and then when you are able to use them, just come and use them. So I've been doing that, and I realized maybe it's time to actually just kind of use them and go for not as long a length of time as I went. If you remember before, I got to go for 2 weeks, which was amazing. This time I'd only be going for a little over a week, which is still still great. It's absolutely awesome, but that part of the trip is already taken care of. So, you know, that's one kind of thing where maybe we have to think about doing it. And then some other stuff and some other conversations later, and the more my fiance and I are looking at it and talking about it and getting TikToks and recommended, we decided we might be able to swing it. It would be really fun. It's over a year away. Like, I'm not going until basically a year from now, if not longer. So we have plenty of time to plan, and we've already kind of booked everything. So it is definitely set in stone. I'm really, really excited, of course, as I always am. I always take every trip to Disney as a really cool opportunity to steal inspiration, architecture, rides, things like that. And I'll be able to do things that I didn't get to do at Disney previously, such as certain restaurants that weren't open the last time I was there. And Tron is open now. So of course that has nothing to do with my save file, but I do have to do that. But yeah, really exciting. I'll have more news and things to share on that as we get closer, and then obviously when I come back I'll have lots of stuff to talk about. But I wanted to share and let you guys know I've got a lot more pressing stuff going on. I'm getting married in a couple of weeks and I'm so stressed. I'm trying to keep things going on the save file, but honestly it's a good distraction for me. Like I wake up and I spend like half the day dealing with wedding things and half the day dealing with save file things. And whenever I don't want to do one or the other, I just switch. So it's a really good balance for me right now, but I'm very busy and overall just very stressed. It's starting to relax as we get closer to the date, but then a new wave is going to pick up of just like nerves and hoping that everything is here and perfect and, you know, all of that stuff. My sister is coming to London for the first week that I'm getting married, that entire week, and I'm so excited to be able to show her around and take her to all of the places that one would want to go the first time they come into London. So I'm also simultaneously planning that whole thing and that whole week for when she comes in. So it's been a lot, but it's good. I'm busy. In more pressing save file news, now that we are finishing Sulani, and this is the last build, and of course I'll have the creative sim that comes out immediately after for the household that's going to be living in this home. I don't have any more townies for Sulani when we do the Jolly Roger household. That is the last video for Sulani. A lot of you are probably going to be wondering, what is the next world? I usually announce it way before now, and the truth is it was a really last minute decision. One of my Patreon perks is that I usually let patrons pick the next world that we do, and this was a time where I had my schedule line up in a certain way and I was looking at it in the worlds, and I decided that I was just this once going to pick myself and do something that I was really excited to go into. It's going to be a small world, so it'll be really quick. And it's October, so it is really on theme. It's a world that makes sense to do in this month. And to be honest with you, I went back and forth on this a lot because I do like to obviously honor my Patreon perks, but it was just something where I felt like my patrons would understand. They'd probably be excited, hopefully most of them, as much as I was, to do this. And like I said, we're going to do a small world next, like one with 5 lots or less. So just get it out of the way quickly. I've done a lot of larger worlds back to back to back, and it's nice to just do one, get those 5 lots done, the couple of households and townies that'll live there, and move on to the next world. So with that being said, the next world for the Disney save is going to be Moonwood Mill. That is the world that comes with the Werewolves pack. It's a 5-lot world. It's a little spooky, but it's got like more of an industrial, old abandoned factory spooky aspect to it. It feels a lot like Forgotten Hollow. And speaking of that, there was some ideas back when we did Forgotten Hollow that just never made it in, and I ultimately decided that I was going to be making basically like a version 2.0 of the save file where I would include things that didn't make it. Now that idea has sort of evolved over time because I've been doing replacement lots, and so I don't really need to do like a second version of the save. You can just sort of pick what you want to use. But there were so many things that very specifically should have gone into Forgotten Hollow but just couldn't fit, and one of those things was Nightmare Before Christmas. It's very specific. It has this like really interesting tone and art style that doesn't mesh well if I was to just like drop it in any world in The Sims 4. It has to go almost like themed together in one world, which is why I created this idea of doing a second version of the save file, because originally I would have done a second version of Forgotten Hollow and it would have been basically entirely Nightmare Before Christmas themed, just so we could keep everything that's a little wacky and that Tim Burton sort of style and keep it in one place together so so it feels cohesive. And it's so weird and its own thing that it doesn't like ruin the aesthetic of everything else that's going on in the save. But now that we have Moonwood Mill and we have vampires and werewolves and other occults that can be mixed in, and again, Moonwood Mill has this aesthetic that's like everything feels a little grungy, industrial, abandoned, which is very similar to the style of Nightmare Before Christmas and Tim Burton's work. I felt like we could get away with it there, and that means I don't have to do the second version of that world, and we can start doing some of the most popular characters that people have been really excited about in a world and during a time in November and October where it really kind of fits into this spooky season. So we're going to go from this beautiful, bright, colorful tropical world to this spooky, crazy wackiness of Moonwood Mill and Nightmare Before Christmas. And I'm immediately going to be starting to put out those videos as soon as we are done with Captain Hook's crew. I decided to just go straight into the world so that we could get some of those videos out and done in time for October. Get some spooky content out for you guys. And the world is only 5 lots, so there's not a ton going on as far as movie diversity. It does include, I'll let you know, more than Nightmare Before Christmas. There's a few more movies that are going to be included in the world, but more so in the background and like the towny aspects of it. I'm not going to spoil it too much. You'll see it unfold as the videos sort of come through the end of October, but I'm really excited. I hope that you guys are too for the new world. If you'd like to be a part of like the planning process and get access to my exclusive Google Doc that has all of the characters and where you can make recommendations for their backgrounds and traits and stories and stuff like that, that's included in my Patreon perks, included in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.